legitimately, there are very good I would even say top 3 champions that you could pick for each role that would be a marksman champion.
Counterpoint. You can play tanks in every role too.
And lose.
And who's complaining about this?
How is that a counterpoint? Because they're not going to be a top 3 champion pick.
Nautilus is a
role.
top 3 carry if he has.
What's your top 3 mid tank?
Scion.
That's not top 3. Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 8, Episode 24. And we've got Jatt back on The Dive after 10,000 years.
Look at us. Look at us.
Jatt has returned.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. When's the last time I did this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't even know.
It doesn't stick out in your memory like you're the best day ever?
The last time I did the dive, you weren't here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and neither was he. If you go back in the archives, I think in 2022.
So you did it with Mark and Azael.
No, I did it with like Emily and Raz. And they just called it the dive this time because you guys, I don't know what happened, but they were just like, we need you to
That's
dive.
the dive.
And we just
B team, right?
did the dive.
Oh, actually, I remember
the lounge
this.
That's the dive academy.
Does that count?
This is last year. Now I remember. Yeah,
That was 2 years ago.
I think pretty sure it was last year.
Oh, well.
But anyways,
Yeah.
Azael is out for personal reasons. So Jatt
Where were you?
Wait, what?
Oh, I thought you were talking about last year. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think the last time I did the dive with you,
today.
Kobe, must have been pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It would have been like 2019.
It has been a long time ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we first started and we were over down the hallway in that like tiny room? There were no cameras and we just had these headsets.
Oh yeah, the original podcast.
Yeah,
dives.
the very first.
Yeah, I do remember that. We've come so far, like at least 100 feet away.
Yeah, yeah. We moved
Just
a long
across
way.
a few
We have
conferences.
infinitely more cameras though.
You do.
We had 0 cameras at the start.
There's 4 cameras here.
Yeah. So for the longest time too, even when like we had Mark doing it, we only had the 2. There was like a single for Azael and then a double for me and Mark. And when we got Meteos there, like Meteos deserves his own single.
Damn. Okay. VIP treatment. I like it.
So you're the reason we got the extra cameras.
Let's go.
Brought him on and had to improve. There is a bunch of news this weekend actually though. Starting with, we'll start slow here and we'll ramp up because there's like roster changes and some pretty deep interviews with LCS players.
We got C9TL this week.
We do. Some super hype matches. I was actually hyping it last week on the dive as like our biggest thing to look forward to. So
Man, it better not suck.
Dude, if it's
We've waited the whole split.
like FlyQuest Dig.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it better be better than that.
We're building it all up like the FlyQuest Dig matchup, and then
Yeah.
if it's even faster and even worse than that series, if that's possible. Anyways, though, first thing on the news that's starting a bit slow is the T1 skins. Did you guys get a look at the kind of previews of the T1 skins?
Yeah.
Because I saw sentiment kind of both ways. The first reaction for a lot of people was like, oh, these don't seem as T1 related and like the team, focus as a lot of the ones in the past.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it, and since we already have so many T1 skins, since they've won so many times, I'm okay with like the more Korea-centric angle that they went with the design. They have a lot of like traditional Korea elements added to them, and so you kind of really get a feel for the pride in their country that they have.
I mean, it's kind of hard to just make 5 more. Let's just do the T1 colors and full branding for the 23rd skin or something. There's more than 20 T1 skins once these release.
Yeah.
So having an actual tie to the story of how they won this last World Championship was them actually succeeding in Korea as the last Korean team, knocking down all the LPL teams. I think it's super fitting. Also, do you see it's the second T1 Lee Sin skin. So they have the Spider-Man meme in the skin. Like,
really?
Yeah, I think this might be a recall animation where T1 Bengi points at T1 owner and they're just like,
really?
Recalling, yeah.
Oh, that's sick, actually.
Sick.
I like that. Dude, I'm kind of surprised Keria went with Bard. I feel like He's not that popular of a champion.
He wanted Lux, but he didn't play it. That's the rumor I saw on.
Oh,
on the
big
internet.
actually big financial mistake by him. Because
He should have. But who should he have played Lux against? They had a rough road.
I don't know, dude. If you're gonna win Worlds, just lock it in.
Yeah, get one in there.
Yo, Lux looks good
Game
here.
3 of the finals. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're up 2-0 already, man.
Yeah, no, for real. Because they get a portion of the skin sales, and Bard, like, no hate on Bard, but he's not popular. So, wouldn't have been my choice. Jinx, good choice. Lee Sin, good choice. Faker skin is Orianna skin. That's kind of hype. I like the Jace as well.
The Jace one especially because Zeus's tie-in with his name and the theme and being his favorite champions is really special, I feel like. So those ones are definitely cool. So the Lee Sin one as well, you're talking about going for money, Meteos. Lee Sin has been the most popular jungler for like 8 years. He's still
really?
right now. I just clicked on it. Play rate, he's still number 1. Viego is actually number 2. Is extremely popular in being a much more recent champion. But Lee Sin has stood the test of time, and I've always said that I feel like this champion is just so well designed. If you get outplayed, you feel like they outplayed you. There's fairly few situations where you feel like, oh my god, Lee Sin is so unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think people like him too because even if you feed most of your games, if you get that sick play, it's like there's some people who just have montage vision when they play him. They're like, I'm just going to go for this crazy flash war jump buffer ult, and if it works, I'm clipping it, and that's going to be like, on my Twitter for life. And if it doesn't work, I'll just try again.
Yeah.
My flash is up.
And I don't record that one. I don't post that one on Twitter.
It didn't happen. Yeah.
Exactly. It's definitely interesting to see the champions that really have stood the test of time. I know that you are very like you don't like bringing up this story, but I'm gonna bring up the Lee Sin story of the 40-minute game where so much happened, and then people always talk about you make this one.
It was
really big
70 minutes.
It was not 40 minutes.
It was a 70
I know
minute game.
that's part of the reason that you don't like the story.
No, I mean, I don't care about it. Dude, I hear it legitimately every single day. No joke. Anytime there's a Lee Sin anywhere near my vicinity, it's 60 minutes.
The number gets bigger every time.
No, the kick happened at 66 minutes or something in the game. Like, that's actually when it happened. I don't know. I think maybe at first it bothered me a bit, but I've just heard it so many times. Like, I don't care. It's
Yeah,
just
you
a
just
meme
brush
at
it
this
off
point.
now. But that's when you are talking about, you just need the one big moment. Like that's also something that I was thinking about. And it's like, yeah, you can win a whole game just like that with your huge Lee Sin kick.
Yeah. I mean, I have another story about that game that's completely off topic.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's go.
So this was Worlds in North America in San Francisco in 2016. You guys were playing Flash Wolves, right?
Yeah.
That was the 70-minute Lee Sin game. Mm-hmm. At the time, the only chant that people knew was TSM. So, and this is where we still had our audio blasted to like the whole crowd, and there were like 4,000 or 5,000 people there.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how to chant C9.
They were struggling. They were
struggling
like,
with the breaths.
C.
Well, no, because
died.
TSM is natural, right? It's TSM, breath.
Yeah.
TSM, breath. But people would just try and say C9 back to back forever, and they run out of breath so quickly.
C9.
C9. I'm just like, guys, stop. So during the game, because it was so long and boring on the cast, I decided, let's go
boring.
C9. Clap, 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 clap. Let's go C9.
That's the one I've heard.
And now it's stuck around ever since if you didn't have that Lee Sin game, I would never have had the time to teach the audience a unified way of chanting C9.
Also, well, I mean, that's what I was going to say because that is the most generic chant. It's always, let's go, whatever.
Exactly.
Beat.
For whatever reason, at the time, people had not agreed that that's how you need to chant 2-syllable team names.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean...
well, I think people had, but just not League of Legends.
It hadn't happened
League of Legends fans.
Yeah, it hadn't happened yet.
Dude, I remember being kind of bored in that game too, actually. I know on the lead up to that play, I just felt like the whole game we couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I just was at their red, and I remember in comms saying something to the extent of, I'm just going to wait here. I don't even care. I'm just sitting here forever. And it kind of worked out. So
Yeah, and then he did, and then they won.
And now we'll tie it in. T1 won that world championship. And now they've won it again, and we just finished our skin discussion.
Wow.
true.
This is what we get for bringing Jatt back.
There we go.
Maybe this beautiful tie.
I'll only tell stories pre-2018. Those will be my only tangents.
Good.
Since we also have been talking about popularity of champions and Lee Sin being the most popular, I think it is fitting that our next topic is the least popular champion in the game, which is Skarner. Skarner has reclaimed his award of being least played, least popular champion.
Wait, is he actually the least? Actually, the least?
I exaggerate. I'm exaggerating a little bit.
I'm checking.
But Skarner has dropped to below the pre-visual
No, he's the
upgrade.
least. When I check 14 days, he's got the lowest pick percentage.
Yeah,
but he's still banned. His presence is higher.
Really? It's just people who don't read patch notes.
Yeah.
It's so to me though. This was one of the patch notes that I was kind of calling for the longest, and was happy to see, because the frustrating parts about playing Skarner are the multiple kidnap, attributes that have been added to the kit with the ultimate and the E acquire range, pulling people backwards when you're just like on the model. And being able to get these weird, push back into tower range and push back into these walls, which made him such an annoying top laner to play against around towers, or even in team fights later on when he'd pull out these weird moves. They solved one of them in the patch notes. Another little patch note preview where they're taking away that weird E acquire range where it doesn't look like he should be grabbing you with his claws when he's grabbing you, off of the side of his model or something, or off the back of his model.
I think that's definitely a change in the right direction for Skarner, because I was actually someone who was really excited about these Skarner changes. For me, historically, Skarner was actually the first champ that I climbed and ranked with back in Season 2. I just spammed Skarner every game. So he kind of has a special place in my heart, but he's been so bad for so long. His Dominion crystals were the worst thing ever. So when I heard they were getting removed, I was kind of excited. And I think thematically, he's pretty cool right now, going through walls. His ult is kind of interesting, but he just does not feel good to play. He was overtuned and good because he had some crazy W interactions with Comet and lane, and he was just abusive. So obviously that needed to get nerfed. His E hitbox is super jank. So I think as they're fixing the issues, they can kind of hopefully be able to buff him in a way that makes him feel more satisfying to play and more fair to play against. But I don't know. He's pretty bad. I don't see why people would play him right now.
Yeah. To me, though, I'm at least glad, like you're saying, they're cleaning up the jank of the champ, right? Because it did feel weird that a newly, redone champion introduced some more things that just seem off with the eyeball test.
Dude, I feel like his ult is also...
I think there's something with the indicator. So to me, with that one, because it came down to, I feel like the actual spell goes before the visual indicator finishes, because there is it does feel so quick, right? And you can tell the snap is just as the visual indicator is towards the end. So I think that's something that they might be able to look at next.
Yeah.
Well, the part I don't like about it is that when you're playing Skarner, the fact that you don't pull them on top of yourself feels so bad. So you have to do these weird interactions where you grab someone and then you run into a wall because it'll never put them on the other side of a wall. So that's the only way you can get them next to you. Otherwise, it's just weird. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me.
So what I like at Skarner here, this, and apologies, this is a post-2018 story. This is a 2019 story. So it's going to be a little more...
It's close.
Yeah, it's close. Because I was on the balance team when a lot of the Akali snaps were going up and down, because Akali, when she originally got reworked, was able to be invisible under turrets. And then there was this cycle of nerfing her down to make sure she wasn't banned every game and super frustrating, and then trying to buff up a different aspect of the kit to get her win rate and playability and fun in a place where players liked it, while not absolutely ruining the pro scene. That's the constant battle with all of these champions. And then with the Skarner rework, as you mentioned, it was fun and satisfying just because of the tuning, right? But then once people actually played against it a few times, well, it turns out it's actually way too frustrating to play. I will say with all the changes they've done now, they actually have space to buff. Because
they are including buffs in this patch with the patch where they take out the E acquire range. So.
I think they're going to have more space to buff though, because I can look at Lowalytics and get like the first very small amount of data we have on the patch because we're filming this like Wednesday morning. The jungle win rate is almost 50%, but the top lane win rate is like down at 43. So if it's not a viable flex, that already gives you way more pro flexibility in terms of the places you can add power. So I think they actually have like 3 or 4% of field buffs they can do to the jungle role as long as they've kind of removed him as a laner with a lot of their changes, I hope. And I think a lot of Skarner players just want to play him in jungle. If we're talking about post versus pre-rework Skarner, because I think the top Skarner players with the rework weren't Skarner players, right? But the core Skarner players actually just lost a champion, and then now that it's been nerfed, the new Skarner players don't have a champion to play. So that's the problem they're in right now.
Both those core Skarner players are probably
I was going to say the same thing.
Captain Flowers,
all 2 of them,
and the other guy. I don't know his name yet. But I actually think this one is trending a little bit in the right direction. If there was some changes, I think they need, and this is going to sound maybe a little counterintuitive, but they need to make the champion easier. I think Skarner's too hard. Look at the win rate curves. Emerald and Diamond are like a solid 3 or 4% higher than all the other tiers in terms of win rate. So there's a lot of stuff in the kit that is too hard to execute for the average player.
It didn't feel particularly difficult to me. I guess there's a lot of options with being able to drive through walls and when you need to use your ultimate. Sometimes if you have CC that kind of needs like setup CC sometimes, then it could be more like high-end skewed or something like that.
I'm curious how that's going to change with the E change, because to me, that was always the highest skill, if you want to call it, is just recognizing when you can get the completely unfair E's.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of Skarner players, myself included, had the learning curve where, you play them the way that you think Riot intended at first, which is, you come in through the wall and you grab them. But what ended up being best is when you go for a gank, you just hold your E forever. And then, if you can get them to flash before you just flash E, pull them back, and it's over. Or if you can just get on top of them, E them into the wall, it almost felt like you were playing Poppy in a way of like how you actually controlled the character for ganks. So I think that, I don't know, his E could definitely be more intuitive. I always felt that like not scaling with your own move speed was really weird on his E. So I think he definitely needs some love. His clear speed's also horrible for a jungler, which I think is the thing that holds him back the most. So we'll see.
Yeah, because he got a lot of nerfs like leading up to this change. So they really have.
I think next patch or the patch after, they're going to do some big buffs to his stats. That's my from the outside prediction.
Yeah.
And maybe some like quality of life buffs in there as well that don't help his laning phase.
Mm-hmm.
On to the biggest news, though, the most LCS related, the 100 Thieves roster swap, as well as the 100 Thieves story with Sniper tweeting out about how difficult it is to keep your mental health good as a pro player, and then doing a follow-up interview as well that was just posted earlier this morning, like a couple hours ago. We didn't get to fully dive into it, but saw his tweet last weekend as well. And this is in tandem with 100 Thieves replacing Meech with Tomo, and Tomo citing, or them citing Tomo kind of deciding to take a step back because of mental health as well. So it really does seem like this season for 100 Thieves, the rocky season that they've had following up their, I would say, very big success as far as spring went. Following it up with a very rocky summer here so far is really taking a toll on the team atmosphere. And this is a bit worrying for me with these young players, Sniper and Meech, both extremely young players. And Sniper is one of our most hype rookies that we have had in the LCS in a very, very long time. And he was even performing really well, getting a lot of solo kills in spring and then got a couple solo kills this time around too. But the summer struggles really, really seem like they have had some deeper effects on this team.
And I'm curious how they're going to bounce back from this. So just one of the reasons I think they're struggling is they've had one of, if not the hardest strength of schedule up until this point, because we've changed the format. We do single round robin best of 3. So the standings are not going to reflect the strength of the teams until the end. And they play Immortals in week 6 this week, and they play Shopify Rebellion in week 7. Okay. So they've literally only played the top other 5 teams, and then the bottom 2, if we're, power rankings, because everyone's 1 and 4, basically. Yep. But power rankings, they haven't played the bottom 2 teams yet. But then, just mentally, because they've lost so many games, they themselves feel like they're in the dirt. And I think it absolutely does affect them. Some stats for Sniper, based on, I think, the expectations he would have going into this split, are going to affect how he feels about his own performance. So it's like, I need to back up a second with my take. I think the success that 100 Thieves had in spring changed their expectations so that they're now disappointed with their current level. But if we went back 5 months and said, how do we expect this 100 Thieves team to perform? It's about this. It's about what they're doing in summer. But because they got so hyped about themselves in spring, because they had some better than expected performances, and I think some good drafts and some best of 1 variants help them out, I think it just can lead to this negative cycle in their head. I did want to go through these stats, though, with Sniper. He actually led the league in solo kills in spring. He had 15 solo kills. So he's had like an actual incredible year as a whole. Mm-hmm. He has 4 in summer, 15 in spring, 4 in summer so far. But both splits, he's led the league in isolated deaths. Currently he has 18. In spring he had 29. So he himself has some issues. But I don't know. That was a lot on Sniper. I want to let you guys talk about.
Part of that's being a top laner, I think.
For sure. Well, being a young top laner.
Yeah. Because isolated deaths, it sounds like when you bring up, solo kills and then isolated deaths, it feels like you'd compare those 2 stats, but it's not like you're getting solo killed and isolated deaths. Usually it's just, you were caught out, you got collapsed on, whatever.
And they're almost always going to be for players that lose a lot of games.
Yeah.
Just because 100%. You're not going to get isolated deaths that much when you're winning.
And top laners split push the most as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I would, if a top laner didn't have the most isolated deaths on your team, I would be somewhat worried. So
no, he led the league though in both splits.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta send it, bro.
If you're gonna do it the best.
I do think that for 100 Thieves, I'm not surprised they made a roster swap. That's kind of their bag. Yeah. It happened to me a couple times.
Oh man.
Where it just seems like, we're not winning. Let's try something else. And if it works, we're geniuses for the swap. If it doesn't work, let's make another swap till it works. So I'm not surprised to hear it.
Is this the role you would swap?
Me? I don't know. I mean, I'm generally not a fan of mid-season swaps unless there's something just truly dysfunctional going on, because
they did make this particular one sound like it was Meat deciding to take a step back, though, because of the pressures of the mental health issue.
Yeah, I mean, that could be. We never really know what's going on from the outside. But I would say this 100 Thieves, they are definitely a victim of the format, I would say, because I think your point, Jatt, of the strength of schedule is super valid. And just the fact that it's a single round robin for the whole split is so weird. It's just going to give you, I feel like, a really biased view on your strength as a team, right? Because you only play each other team once. And there's also been, how long has the split been going on? Almost 2 months now. And there's been 5 series total for each team.
Yeah. 5 series in like 7 or 8 weeks. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so even though their record's not good, I guess there's also scrims to consider, but I think that 100 Thieves are absolutely, they have a harder schedule than most teams. And just the fact that the meta really didn't favor what worked for them in spring. I actually think that 100 Thieves is good at the parts of the game that are more legit in my mind, in the sense that the way the game's played right now is not really how it's been played over the course of League's entire history, right? It is AP farm junglers. It is super safe AD carries mid. It is just very, very scale heavy. Where I feel like what 100 Thieves is good at is it's actually the more difficult way to play the game. Coming up with really clever plays. River is just a super smart jungler. He is good at finding picks and whatnot, but you can't really do that on Zyra Karthus. Sniper's very good at the bruiser matchups top. Quid does super well on stuff like Ahri. So I feel like they're good at the technical, difficult parts of the game, but the meta right now just isn't really favoring that at all. There was also lane swaps going on at the beginning of the split, which, as a rookie top laner who's not really a tank player, that's so rough. There's no way you're ever going to practice, how do I play the game as Cassante down 5 levels on everyone?
Mm-hmm.
That's not something you do in solo queue. And so even if you just look at what Sniper's been playing, his most played this split is Cassante, and he's not won a game on him yet. So I think that it sucks that they're taking it so hard but that is just the reality of the pressure of being a pro player. And I think that being able to get over those hurdles is definitely something that comes with time. Because I know for myself, in the beginning, I got really upset when my team would lose games. I would be in like the worst mood all day. I would not want to do anything. I would just go grind. But over time, it doesn't feel as bad. It's like the wins don't feel as good, the losses don't feel as bad. You just kind of get used to it.
Yep.
So I definitely think it's a rookie thing, and hopefully they're able to bounce back and he doesn't feel too bad about it.
Yeah, this situation this week just so clearly reminded me of the discussion that we were having last week from the opposite perspective, where last week we were discussing Dignitas so much and how even though Dignitas have been so open about getting turbo blasted in scrims, 0 and 20 on a week and stuff like this. And they're always memeing and joking in interviews and stuff because they have so many veterans. To your point, we were kind of making the point last week about how at least one of the positive things is how they have been able to handle it. They also have the benefit of having the reverse of the schedule, or kind of the same schedule, I guess, where they played all of the difficult teams first, and then now they're trying to look forward to more of the easy ones, even though spoiler alert, they did lose to one of the easy ones.
Oops. I feel like we'll talk about that later. There's some interesting stuff here.
Which we are going to get to later. But this window into 100 Thieves where they're opening up about how difficult it is for them. This is the contrast of our story last week, where we're talking about how, well and jokingly they're able to handle losses. 100 Thieves, definitely not so much. Because also talking to the coaches in some of these coaches interviews that we've done at LCS, and some of the players as well, they are getting turbo blasted in scrims, as well as losing a lot of these stage games for 100 Thieves. So even though they have so infrequent stage games, the rigorous schedule with the practicing and losing all of these scrims in addition to the stage games is really compounding, and it's a lot to take in. Like you were mentioning, all this like list of stuff that as new players, these rookies have had to deal with, all these extremely different metas of lane swaps and now turbo farming AP junglers, although Sejuani is still a premium pick, and they could go a bit more that direction. I feel so bad because I loved watching this 100 Thieves team in spring, and they had the most diverse champion pool like that. They were also one of the best just from an entertainment perspective, from fans' perspective. They're like, 100 Thieves games are the best. These guys are picking Shaco and Veigar and, Yone mid, even though that's super common now, but Aatrox, mid counter and all this type of stuff that makes the games way more exciting to watch. Plus, they have the technical skill and the mechanics to back up a lot of these more difficult champions, like Meteos is talking about as well. So that's why this week really made me pretty sad.
Yeah.
Because I was really hoping that 100 Thieves were going to kind of just jump train on this meta and say, like, you know what, screw it. It's not working for us following it, so we're going to just go back to, some more different drafts and mess around with stuff.
The irony of this weekend as well is they won game 1 against FlyQuest.
Yeah.
So in spring, it's a win, and you don't have a benching, legitimately. But one thing I do want to touch on before we move on, I know we spent a long time on this topic, is if you are going to have a role like a player swap, I do think this is the one to do, or at least I understand why it happens, because if I look at the last 2 weeks of Meech, yes, they lost to Cloud9, but in those games specifically, they were against Cloud9. Cloud9 played Zeri Alistair both games. Just like basically fearlessly locked it in. Mm-hmm. They had an Ashe Nautilus lane and a Kai'Sa Leona lane. Both those lanes, in theory, should have pressure on Zeri Alistair. In neither game did they have pressure on Zeri Alistair. And then the last game that Meech played, as Misfortune, they got 2v2 dove double kill, nothing in return.
Dude,
if that's not the straw that breaks the camel's back, as a team that identified themselves as a solo lane dominant team in the spring, and if they're trying to get back to that type of winning, those things cannot happen. You can't have the enemy bot lane on Teamfight Gods get away with it, or have your bot lane in even matchups getting 2v2 dove double killed. So I think, based on what we've seen from the 100 Thieves statements and the interviews, the young team is really struggling to deal with the adversity, but the result we see on the Rift is a bottom lane that you can't have and win games.
Yeah,
That's true.
I also want to be clear, I wouldn't put it all on Meech. It's
if
both of them.
If you're from the outside, like what can they do in a short time frame? Because it's also we're also in a new environment. Like the 100 Thieves doesn't have their academy team. They had to get Tomo from DSG. Who knows what? I think DSG is pretty open about LCS players not being like big buyouts or something, but like it's also hard to actually find replacements for any role. So, and I know Ayla does a lot of shot calling as well, so they wouldn't want to swap that out. So,
yeah, but their bottom lane was, as a tandem, the worst in the league.
For sure.
Yeah. So.
And it's not guaranteed to be better, but if you're trying to make a reaction of like, well, we wouldn't want to not change this and then go 1-6. Because I actually think there's a really high chance they ends 3-4 and move into playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely feel for the players and hope that there is a bounce back here, because they certainly were one of the most fun teams to watch. We are going to take a quick break here, real quick though. We will be right back talking about the big patch that just dropped this morning.
Hello?
Bro, why are you parking?
Seriously? What is that?
Remote smart parking assist. You could have parked anywhere.
They could have parked there. They could have parked there. They could have parked there.
Welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia. Part 2. This is patch 14-15. Pretty exciting one that just dropped, because the biggest single topic in all of League of Legends, AD carries taking over the world. Literally AD carries taking over every square inch of
we haven't seen as many AD supports lately.
Like you say, as
AD
many.
support.
I still like
Not as many.
I still like Senna, although Senna is now played with a farming support, quote unquote. So you can kind of work up an argument to say that Senna is not the support.
Senna's a marksman.
Yeah, but
True.
It's literal. Every single role has a good marksman to play. Kindred is amazing jungle right now. The tiny baby nerfs that they did to Q barely scratched Kindred at all. And so legitimately, there are very good I would even say top 3 champions that you could pick for each role that would be a marksman champion.
Counterpoint. You can play tanks in every role too.
And lose.
And who's complaining about this?
How is that a counterpoint? Because they're not going to be a top 3 champion pick.
Nautilus is a
role.
top 3 carry if he has.
What's your top 3 mid tank?
Scion.
That's not top 3.
You are capping hard.
I could see the panic in his eyes.
Galleon.
But I want you.
No. I was just thinking, this is new.
Yeah.
The level of marksman play. And I just want to check in my own brain, is it because it's new, or is it because it's a big problem?
I would say
it's a problem.
I would say it's a problem.
I agree. I just needed to check.
Yeah.
So my thing with marksman being strong is, I feel for AD carries in the sense that playing bot lane sucks. I never want to go bot. I wouldn't wish playing bot on my worst enemy, because it is rough, dude. You are underleveled. You are at the mercy of your support's competence. Every bruiser and assassin in the game is trying to one-shot you at all points in time. You need items to be useful. Like, I get it. It's tough. There are struggles. But on the reverse side of that, it is so obnoxious to play against the marksman who has, 1 or 2 enchanters with him, and it gets to late game, and you can't do anything against him. He is just so tanky from, barrier and whatever enchanters with them. They're one-shotting you with autos. They're just chain critting you for your whole health bar from longer range. And so when that's so common, and it just feels like there's nothing I can do against them. You can't outplay their auto attacks. They will just right-click you and kill you. So for me, that's why I'm like, when a bot laner does it, at least they have to get to that point. But when a mid laner is playing Tristana and all-inning the assassin and mage and winning by jumping on their head, I'm like, all right, that's not as chill.
Yeah, definitely not chill at all. I was always worried when I saw them trying to correct some of the complaints that you were talking about, these classic complaints of AD carries where they're like, we're so weak and squishy and we depend on everyone else so much. And so then you notice this over the season and over a lot of patches, they made some changes to try and make marksmen like less dependent on other champions and less dependent on their teams, buffing up their early game, giving them a little bit more, survivability here, move speed there, type of thing. But if you do that, then you remove the need for them to be trapped in the bot lane jail, and they escaped. They all jailbreak out and go into your mid lane and your top lane because now they have the ability to actually lane quite well, and you still get the benefit of being the turbo scalers that are going to be priorities in these team fights. Like, you still are able to be the main carries of these team fights with having a better like early stage and not having to be like so weak and kind of like spoon fed by your support and stuff like this. So let's get into what are some of the corrections that the balance team has decided to go with here, because AD carries the first point on their list. They are definitely looking at this issue. And the changes are kind of twofold. They're making some changes to the items, as well as they mention they feel like this fleet footwork change is going to be a big one as far as the early presence and their ability to lane quite so securely, I guess.
So we got Static Shiv price increase and move speed reduction. We got Kraken Slayer move speed reduction, and also slightly less effective on range champions, the Bring It Down passive. The Armor Pen stuff is, I think, completely separate because Lord Dom's got nerfed a little bit and Mortal Reminder got also nerfed a little bit, but mostly it's sustain and lane. I think these are like little chips, little baby chips, because I don't think they want to go back to the reason that they did all these changes where you're actually in a bot lane jail and you're just at a mercy to a soul laner pressing R on you, but they don't like it that they're dominating everything. So I think this will help a bit because the sustain has gone down a bit. They say it's a nerf until level 14, but that means that like level 7, it's what, like 20 or 30% less effective as a heal. So they're very small. I don't think it's going to move the needle a massive amount.
And this has been the strategy that they have taken, I feel like, more frequently.
For sure.
A lot in the recent history is where they do start out with small chips and then, try and follow up with consecutive layered chips, small changes.
I'm getting a little worried about the size of the chips at this point because with the split being as short as it is in so few games, what we don't want to happen is, well, first of all, I don't think anyone wants to see this meta at Worlds. You're getting the best players from around the world playing Trist Corki against each other, and nothing happens for 20 minutes. Like, nah, I'm good. So what? But also, you don't want to see the patch happen too late to the point where teams qualify for Worlds using a certain meta, and then it's just not that going into Worlds. So you won't have teams necessarily at their best with that. And I feel like now is kind of the time you need to just do a bit more heavy-handed changes. Just force something.
So I guess this is kind of a different topic, but I think the only way they have a chance of sticking the landing is if they keep doing small changes. Because to your point, I think it's if they actually just gutted AD carry solo lanes somehow, we already have some teams that have qualified for Worlds. We have playoff seedings that are already set based on this meta. So if you completely eradicate that meta for playoffs, your Worlds qualification is going to be a little bit weird anyway because the playoff seeding has been different. So I think the only way they stick the landing is by doing these small chips and making it so that you can play both, or that there is a disagreement amongst top teams about what is best. I think that's the only way they like actually stick the landing without having a meta that is either just stale or a meta that is inaccurate for the way the teams qualify. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair for sure, and I could be wrong, of course, but I think that most people just like a little bit more action in their games, and when you have these like really safe scaling picks everywhere, it's just like,
Yeah.
why?
I certainly do as well. And I know that they also have a close eyeball on snowballing in the game. And so sometimes they also make other adjustments that are not necessarily related to champions or anything like that, that like incentivize farming over kills, with the small changes to experience for shared kills and stuff like that. And these things all kind of come together. I definitely prefer a League of Legends game state that heavily incentivizes risking and going for kills on champions. At the end of the day, yes, objectives are very important and a critical part of the game, but I think the most exciting thing is always going for kills on the players, not on the AI. PvP is inherently, and I'm super biased, I love PvP in every single game, but to me, should be a very high priority. And even one step further, I further enjoy isolated PvP over every instance of it being a team fight, because they've made it so that you are going to have to team fight in League of Legends, right? Team fight is critical. There's so many objectives now, so many, really big, powerful neutral objectives on the map. But isolated 1v1s and stuff, the peak excitement there is still some of the things that fans look forward to most, the most.
I agree, and I have a half-baked stat because I'm trying to check it live.
Ship these things out. I love these half-baked.
I think
Any good cherries to pick?
the combined kills per minute, which would be the measure of how much PvP there is in the game, are up year over year.
That's good.
Yeah.
I say that's a good stat.
That's good. But here we are complaining that the game is like PvE, but it's more. Is that exactly?
I'm about to answer.
Great. Yeah.
And my answer is that because you get a lot more of the kills in the bigger fights rather than the 1v1
so
scenarios.
We need to check if kills before 14 minutes are up. Like, what's the stat we should check to check the game health here?
Even like skirmishes and 1v1s are kind of separate from full 5-on-5, like dragon team fights. And
so would like solo kills be good for that?
I mean, yeah, solo kills definitely good for that. They're not the end all be all, but we are getting a little deep in the weeds as far as that philosophy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Because I basically just said like all these things we've been complaining about. I don't know, but then I don't have the answer yet, and you'll have to invite me back to answer the questions.
I'm not even necessarily saying that it's a huge problem right now. It's just something that I always have my eye on.
For sure.
And so I always kind of bring up when we do have systemic changes, because we're pairing these AD carry changes, these small nerfs in this patch, with also buffs to AP items.
True.
So whenever you're also buffing up kind of some competitors, then it should have an effect on the general meta there too. I would say that, Storm Surge and Rocket Belt and Cosmic Drive getting some small buffs, and Void Staff even getting 5 more ability power here are some other small like buffs the other way.
Dude,
but
100 health on Cosmic Drive and Rocket Belt
is not a small chip.
That's big.
And I would say it's bigger for junglers. So AP junglers, I think, are still like, there's so many really good options. They talked about not wanting to take a heavy hand to nerfing AP jungle, because even though it's in a very like strong state right now, they like that they've done this, basically is what they said. And they really want, to have a lot of jungle options so that the role, which is very unpopular in solo queue, can be more accessible to people, even though I'm not necessarily on board with having more variations of champions, being the right way to make it more accessible. Having some of these buffs here seems like you could get some more double dipping from AP jungles rather than just AP mid laners that are going to be trying to compete with all these AD carry picks. So quite interesting to keep our eyeballs on the other side of it as well. Since Storm Surge for the longest time, ever since it was super OP, then they nerfed it because the burst damage in the game was so high and everyone was complaining about getting 2-shot in the very beginning of the season. And it was dead for a very long time to now coming back and giving some more burst options.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which champions might show up with these item changes because traditionally these aren't super popular items, and I mean that could be because they're not that strong or whatnot. But if they're the health AP items mostly, it's
how about that Sylas change you were seeing?
yeah. I mean, Sylas is getting some changes, which I don't actually know if that's going to make him better or not. I mean, lower cooldown on Q is going to make it easier for him to farm and maybe have a better time against some of these matchups, but I don't think I'd want to play Sylas into Tristana or Corki.
You were
personally.
just before the show. You were telling us all your tech that you wanted to try on Sylas.
I was trolling. I was saying,
oh come on!
I said Heartsteel Warmogs take Sylas. Like I was.
Where do you play him?
Nowhere. 8 RAM.
In your mind, it is a purely theoretical Sylas.
Dude, it was so sarcastic. That's crazy.
I don't know. You sounded confident about.
No, I mean, like maybe these items, but like, are you really building Rocket Belt on Sylas? I guess you could, but
so I would say, to answer your question, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, right now, I think Diana is. Well, so I'm also more of a like. Solo queue, there's definitely more options to incorporate these, right? So I'm thinking like Diana,
that's a good one.
Even Fiddlesticks is actually very good in solo queue,
True.
And I think is playable in pro, although it's way more difficult because there are a lot of other things you have to consider with Fiddlesticks and like early invades and teams being better at warding where you're going to come from and getting a lot less of these surprise kills that you do in solo queue. But like we have Inspired in the league and he loves playing Fiddlesticks. I've been pulling for it for a while. And so like if you are rushing Rocket Belt on Fiddlesticks, which you don't have to do right now, like Leandry's first is actually the highest win rate, but you could, especially with an extra 100 health, get in there and you can have it. A Rocket Belt can make it easier to make those types of plays with the extra mobility there. So
yeah,
I'm kind of happy for Rocket Belt in particular because I think it's a more fun AP item than some of our generic ones where I'm like, everybody rushing Faded Ashes because the clear speed is insane. And then so everyone's like, well, I'm basically locked into this build where, I'm going to go Leandry's or Blackfire, depending on my champion. But if we get a world where some people are rushing Rocket Belt instead, I think that's a better world to live in.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think Rocket Belt's a super fun item. I do think because there are no Leandry nerfs here, it's still probably going to be the premier AP item. Like, in my experience, from what I've seen and what I've played, Leandry's is just so much better than every other AP item by like a lot that I don't know when you would ever get one of these other items instead of Leandry's. And then also the fact that they're kind of competing for the same role, if you will, in a build where it's, it's your first item durability option because afterwards, say you want a defensive item, none of these are really that. It's going to be Zhonya's, Banshees, whatnot. You want your percent pen, you want your void, your
5 more AP, baby.
The other void item. I'm totally blanking.
The Crypto Bloom.
Crypto Bloom.
It's not Crypto Bloom, is it?
No, it's just Crypt Bloom. But
it's crypto.
You're not alone in that. I think the most common term for it has to do with crypto, just because
because it's funny. It's more fun to say. Like that's all that matters.
It's also better than Void Staff. So buffing up Void Staff by 5 AP isn't like they're like, okay, every mage by third item is going to have 5 more AP because most of them would go Crypt Bloom instead of Void Staff, and this is just like making Void Staff more competitive with it.
Yeah.
So to your point, these these might not necessarily be very impactful as far as these changes go. And then if they are, a lot of them would be more like second items after you like already have a Leandries or something like that. So
Yeah, I like your point about Diana though. I didn't think about that one. I think she's maybe one of the ones that like actually would benefit a lot from Rocket Belt buff. So we'll see.
that'd be cool. That'd be cool if we get some more Diana in there. Some more variation. Let's see. What's your single biggest take on a change here, Jatt? What are you most interested in?
I would say that the Cassiopeia changes missed the mathematical mark. Because in the notes, they said that they wanted to, I'm going to paraphrase, they wanted to make the early game like smoother so you're not ooming all the time. And to compensate for that, we're going to take down a little bit of the late game. But anyone who played Cassiopeia had gotten really good at managing the early game. And then the late game changes just mathematically were so big. I need to pull them up again. But like so basically in exchange for having the Q mana go down by 20 at max rank and gaining a little bit of base mana, the QAP ratio dropped by 0.2 and the EAP ratio dropped by 0.05, which looks small, but when you consider it's like an auto attack, is like a 8% damage nerf to your DPS throughout the entire game. It's just too much. It's day 0 basically, and there's only 1,700 games I'm looking at on Analytics, but the win rate went down 5% on Cassiopeia mid. And it wasn't meant to be like a big nerf. So I think they just did the math wrong, and I hope they hotfix it.
Yeah, that seems fair. Cassio, she was never really known for being a late game monster. She's kind of just known as like a champion one tricks can smurf on you with.
Yep.
And snowball. But yeah, if I was a Cassio main, I would not be super happy about those.
I'd be angrily posting on the R Cassiopeia main subreddit. Be like, but everyone does that.
True.
It's just, I think anytime that you have a niche champion and you try to like make the niche easier, that's not going to actually make it better for the people that play the champion. And the people that play the champion get hurt by all the actual number nerfs that ended up happening. So I think they'll fix that.
Yeah, I think to me, the one that maybe stands out the most is the Varus buffs, because historically, base AD changes on AD carries is kind of huge. And Varus, I know when he got his changes, he lost 3 base AD, and now he's getting back 2. So I would expect him to be pretty good. I know he already gets played occasionally in pro play in solo queue, so I think Varus stonks will be up for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to see some of the outliers kind of nerfed as well. Like the Leona just kind of took over. Leona plus ever since the Warmog's mega buff just was such a mega tank, and I like that they're nerfing not the tankiness but some of the extra damage, because I'm kind of okay with her being a super good engager, but all of the extra like little bits of damage that she added to your kill windows with your AD carries, like the passive damage and the W extra little bit of damage, I think that's a good way to go about like bringing some of those outlier supports back under control. The one to me that I want to bring up is Shyvana, because Shyvana became OP because of the Quick Blades build. And there's been some abusers of Quick Blades. I guess the 2 best have been Volibear and Shyvana, the melee users of it. Obviously, like champions like Tristana and stuff always spam it and build it, and Tristana is super oppressive in pro play. But for solo queue, the Quick Blades build is like such a carry build, and was like a really kind of fun and interesting way of changing these champions, Volibear and Shyvana, and making them something different, like actually playing them way different than normal. And it felt really fun. Yeah. The Shyvana one, I think it was definitely way too strong, and AP Shyvana has always done a lot of damage, so they are making, again, some smaller. They have the notes in here for a 2% nerf plus a 3% nerf plus a 1% nerf to make sure people don't like super freak out. I would say I was always a fan in the past of playing more bruiser style Shyvana. This was all the way back when Frozen Mallet was in the game, though, so that's very, very dated.
Ancient history.
An ancient history build when you would just get the slow and you would just run people down, and you would be able to farm very quickly, and you would go for dragons to try and make the most of your passive, and you would be this massive bruiser. In these AP nerfs and ability nerfs, because of the Quick Blades build for Shyvana that has taken over and causing her to, take over a lot, even stronger than the pure AP builds. They actually baked in some bonus AD ratios here. So
they switched total AD to bonus AD.
Yeah,
and big one.
and it's up a bit. So that's why it's buffs to the bruiser builds, because bruiser builds will have some bonus AD in it.
Because I think when I saw the context, I don't think Navori is actually very popular on Shyvana. Like the Shojin Liandry build is for sure the one that is more popular. Because to me, Navori seems like a luxury item on Shiv. If you're not super ahead, you're just gonna be too squishy.
You're gonna be so
squishy. Health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely targeting that more AP centric build. But honestly, like if it's a 1 to 3% nerf on certain abilities, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think she'll still be able to do what she wants to do. People who like playing it will still be able to have success, but maybe it's just a little easier to play against.
Yeah. No, actually, you're right. I think I was completely blanking and thinking of the Sojin one, because Sojin into Liandry's is the one that's what Lol Dobby made the video on. That's the one that everyone is spamming, and Sojin obviously does also have AD in it. So
win rate's down 4% on day 0 though, 8,500 games. That's pretty big.
Yeah,
numbers are pretty big.
That's definitely substantial there. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I'm definitely looking forward to this patch overall. I don't think it's going to be like massive, sweeping, revolutionary, changes for this LCS this weekend, though.
Do you ever? I don't think so. Is Aurora available to play in LCS?
This week? Yeah.
Really?
So
I mean, I assume so, because they always make us wait. Oh, wait a second. Isn't it globally locked for 4 weeks?
Dude, that's
because I assumed it was on the following patch.
I'm gonna check,
because she was.
I haven't heard anything about her in pro play, but from what I've seen in solo queue, she's kind of what we anticipated, just an absolute terror, especially in top lane. Who was I watching?
Because Aurora seems really strong at the moment.
Yeah, I think I was watching Doklo the other day, and it looked so unplayable for his opponent. Like, I think he was against a Riven, and he was just like QEQing the dude under turret and doing like over half his health from one combo. I wouldn't want to lane versus that.
Yeah, I mean, she did get nerfed on this patch. So she was way OP on release, because if they ever instantly nerf on the very following patch a brand new champion, then that is very abusive. So
she's clear this weekend.
Nice.
She's playable?
That's
14-15. That's when LCS lets her. So we'll be the first Aurora region.
Right.
Okay.
So
that's exciting.
So
that'll be fun.
So it's not the hard lock on 4 weeks. It's just on next patch. That's very good news for us. So we're going to be the first Aurora users.
Or banners.
And then I just wanted to throw this in since I think we're done. Do you ever find it crazy that we've been reading patch notes for 14 years? We're on patch 14-15.
No, because I have played games where they don't patch, and it's a horrible existence.
I know, but that's so many patches. There's like 20 to 25 patches a year for 14 years.
Yeah, what's the stats on total number of League of Legends
It's got to be over 300. That's insane.
Is it, though?
How many people do you think have read every patch note?
I love the delivery, too.
Is that, though?
How many times have you eaten lunch in the last 14 years, dude?
Yeah.
It's a long time. It's just a thing that happens. It's all good.
It's impressive.
Yeah,
I also think it's why it's more okay to do these little love taps, because I think because we've had 14 years of patch notes, I bet you the percentage of people that read patch notes has gone down over time.
Well,
because it just becomes overwhelming. People just listen to the dive to hear our opinions, and that's it. That's the patch note.
That's it.
We even have pro players that don't read patch notes.
Yeah.
And
because how do you keep 300 patch notes clear in your head?
I feel like it's
You get so confused.
I don't think you go from reading patch notes to not reading patch notes. So I think there's just a certain type of player that doesn't read anything, even tooltips on their character. They just
They're
kind
a
of
feel player, yeah.
yeah, they just go strictly on feel. Like they'll watch someone play it and be like, okay, I'll do that, but they never actually read anything. So I mean, that's fine. I do that for some games. I think it's all right. I think the thing for me is sometimes it becomes hard to remember the state of certain things in the game because it'll change so much.
Up and like the Senna soul rate,
Oh, dude.
drop rate.
The craziest lever of all time.
Holy.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we do that all the time when it's on the co-streams with Sneaking Double Lift. We're just like, what is this mechanic right now? I don't remember. We go to the patch notes. It's been changed like 10 times. It can be hard to keep track of, but it is good they adjust the game, keep trying to make it fun and fair.
We're blessed.
Yeah, especially if you've been playing since the beginning, you can have some like artifacts or like vestigial patch notes in your head.
Exactly.
And you're so sure that, some small niche mechanic works some way. But let's get into the actual LCS games here, because this weekend we've got everybody looking forward to the battle at the top, the undefeated teams, Team Liquid versus Cloud9. Let's just start with the best right off the bat, because even though it is going to be on Sunday, August 4th, that is what everybody is looking forward to. And I want to start off this discussion by saying we have never had an undefeated team in the LCS. So it would be record-breaking, even though we are on a different format here and it is best of threes, it would be record-breaking to have an undefeated LCS team.
Yeah.
And if you look at both these teams, Cloud9 and Team Liquid do not look like they will lose to anyone else. So if they win this series, there is a very good chance that that could be the first undefeated LCS team.
So we've had Immortals back in the day when they had Huhi reign over, only lost one game in spring.
Yep.
And then we had TSM, the split later, when we switched to best of threes 2016 summer, go, what was it, 17-1? In best of threes. They had like 6 or 7 game losses, but I guess we're counting it.
We're counting, whatever the format is.
It would be a huge accomplishment. Cloud9 has the harder road because they play TL and then also FlyQuest. But it's exciting. Are we going to talk about last week's games, or we're just cruising straight through to this week?
I mean, you can reference all the stuff that happened in the last week's games and go over anything that stood out to us. How has the how we usually do it, the vibe that we usually go with, and then we look forward and use the context of last week's game.
Hell yeah. I have a topic about C9.
Okay.
Fire.
Yeah, I have a lot of stats.
Love stats.
Okay.
Deliver them.
Agree or disagree?
We're on the edge of our seats
I
here
know.
in anticipation, Jatt.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to deliver on the anticipation I built. They have been so incredibly good in the early game this split. Their gold difference at 14 is plus 2.6K. Their gold difference at 8 is 1,000. So on average, 8 minutes into the game, they're already up 1,000 gold. They've gotten first blood in 10 of their 11 games and first turret in 9 of their 11 games. So the interesting comparison that people keep talking about C9 is how they're so much more, like I've heard this, they're much more connected, they're more coordinated, they're improving their mid and late game. I'm not sure if they are, because you're going to have a much better post 14-minute game if you're 2.6 thousand gold ahead every single game. So I checked the numbers on this too. Individually, gold differences across roles. Spring plus 300 at 14 for JoJo. Summer plus 372. Not that big of an improvement. Berserker plus 200 in spring, 384 in summer. So a slight improvement. I'm not 100% sure how many Senna games factor into that, so AD carry is always a little fraudulent. Blabber, the biggest improvement, 281 to 581, gold difference of 14. Fudge, plus 35. Thanatos, plus 780. So how much has Thanatos, I guess this is the question, how much has Thanatos actually helped this team, or is this just a stat from small sample size, do you think?
So I was listening to your interview that you just had
with APA.
with APA and JoJo.
Yeah,
where
on the LCS YouTube channel, which, by the way, if you like and subscribe to this video and ring the bell, you'll also see all of the great LCS content. It's much more discriminatory in the sense that only good things get posted there now. So it's safe to ring the bell because you'll only get bangers.
Perfect ad. I was listening to that interview that you did where JoJo was referencing Thanatos, and both of them talked about him being, a lane god.
Yeah.
But JoJo specifically just being like, yeah, he's always, winning by 30 CS. It's so nice to have him on the team. Whereas APA was a little bit more critical about the later stages of the game and some of the decisions that Thanatos makes, but the lane phase was massive.
Oh, definitely. I mean, so many of the games, and granted, like you were saying, we haven't seen Cloud9 against TL or FlyQuest yet. So, obviously it's probably not going to be as dominant once those matches have happened. But Thanatos has just performed so well in lane, like you were saying. His Renekton games stand out a lot to me because in the, we see Renekton versus Cassante so many times. It's kind of like the handshake matchup of this season. And he gets massive leads as Renekton almost every single time he plays it. Up 30 CS, taking several plates without any jungle interference. And it's not easy to do that. You're playing as pro players who have played this matchup so many times. And so being able to stand out and get those leads without any help is really impressive and a really good sign for, both Thanatos and C9. So that's super cool to see. And yeah, I mean, I'm really hyped for this team. They've been playing some harder to execute comps as well, stuff like Nidalee, which I'm really interested to see how they do against Liquid because this is obviously going to be the hardest test for them. And it'll show, are they legit the best team if they can roll over Liquid playing these, Nidalee style, really aggressive, just early game, stomping comps, then that's awesome for them. Or, will Liquid be able to challenge them and, not give them these big leads early and then actually test their coordination and their mid to late game cohesiveness? This
is what's really cool to me about this matchup. I have one more stat framing. The combined number of wins of C9's opponents this year, in their 5 match wins, those teams have combined to win 6 matches. Team Liquid has 5 match wins. Their remaining 2 opponents have 9. So that's how easy their schedule has been relative to how hard it will be, which must inflate the stats by a pretty large percentage, which is what makes it so fascinating. Even though we have the trash talk video between JoJo and APA and how their personalities, I think, are so great for the LCS and their ability. They actually, if you watch the video, one comment I loved.
Have you seen it yet?
No, I'm not.
Are you going to watch are you going to watch yourself?
I just checked the YouTube comments and Control F for Jatt. I really didn't care about the I just wanted to see
fair
said about my posting.
the ego Control F.
Yeah, but they're just actually just aggressively complimenting each other. They actually have a lot of respect. Anyway, Impact has 4 player of the series in the 5 series wins that TL has. He's probably having one of his greatest splits ever. And he's always been known for his ability to neutralize opponent top laners. So I'm fascinated to see how Thanatos versus Impact goes. And what's probably going to deflate this is I think Team Liquid should literally just lane swap every game. Because that should be the biggest weakness for Thanatos would be his ability to play from a really low farm state since it takes away one of their greatest strengths. I hope they don't because I just love to see them lane against each other.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't, really prefer watching lane swap games. If it is used as a tool in some of them, then I'm fine with it. But I sure hope that not all of the games are lane swaps. I'll allow them one. You can have one lane swap in the entire series and still be watchable. As far as the matchups, though, I'm also really, really, really focused on jungle because I think that is probably the point on the map that Cloud9 could pressure the hardest, both in draft and in game. I think draft first because it is an area that when Team Liquid had Sejuani and Maokai constantly banned against them
last week,
it really made them squirm, honestly. And as much as everyone likes to talk about, we can play everything. you can play everything, but you're not going to play everything to the same degree.
Yeah.
I think that Team Liquid do know what their strongest identity is, as much as they would like to say we are universally good at everything, which is another topic that JoJo was also critiquing APA and Team Liquid on, that I completely agree with, because, Umpty on Sejuani, I think that is going to happen 0 times in this series, and is probably the best looking that Team Liquid has been. And I think that Blabber is very good at pressuring enemy junglers, being more efficient than them, stealing away camps from them, not wasting, any time kind of idling on the map. And one of Spawn's biggest tenets that he always mentions in all of our interviews that we do with Team Liquid is he's so focused on Team Liquid being a more efficient team than the opponent team. And it's one of the things that they really picked up and improved on a lot at MSI and playing a lot of the international teams, was having a very quick and efficient and objective-oriented and kind of like step-by-step process for their early game. Whereas Cloud9 have been blitzing a lot of these really big gold leads, Team Liquid have been really focused on kind of the process of setting up their step-by-step process for the early game. And I think they kind of really are going to rely on getting Umpty on one of the facilitator picks. It seems like it would just be really weird to imagine TL operating with Umpty being a perma-clearing. He's literally only played one of the AP junglers, which was the brand game, all season long, with them, being in the state that they are in. It would be really weird to imagine them kind of playing the game so differently. So I think that that's not going to be a look that they try versus Cloud9, because they're going to bring what they think is their optimal setup, their optimal strategy here. I think that is a lot more focused.
Yeah, I should clarify. It was 2 weeks ago that we first saw TL pinched off of Maokai Sejuani when they looked weaker against Dignitas. Last week, they just slammed Immortals. Didn't really matter what they were playing. Yeah. The C9 drafts are something I'm interested in as well, because it feels to me, and this is honestly true in spring as well, they kind of just pick champions, which is fine because they're so good at the champions. But I look at their comps and they're not generally like, wow, these are such great pairings or combos of champions. It's just, let's get Thanatos on Gnar and Renekton. Let's get Blabber on something that clears fast. Let's let Vulcan play Alistar. Like, they'll just pick it. Let's just pick Zeri because we can put it in mid or bot lane, right? So part of this is why I think they're so dominant in the early game, but that's also part of where I feel like Team Liquid, if they are to win, should and will attack, is they'll pick for comp more than C9 and then probably just try and swap as much as possible to make the game reach a gold point where Cloud9's not that familiar playing, where it's like even gold at 15 because they always slam people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's kind of the Genji style of play that I think a lot of teams are trying to emulate, where you don't necessarily have the best team comp, but you just have permanent prio the whole game.
Which in itself becomes a good team comp, right?
Yeah, because you don't really worry about the team fights. You just, as long as you're constantly pushing your lanes, it becomes hard for the other team to play. If they want to group, they have to start sacking farm. They fall more behind. They don't actually get to the team fighting phase. And it's hard to pull off. It's not easy, one misstep, or if you don't have everyone synced up pressuring at the same time, someone can get exposed and killed, and then all of a sudden you're behind. You can't keep doing it. So it's definitely a huge asset if you can pull that off. It just depends, how can you pull it off against everybody or only the lower tier teams?
Who wins?
I would say C9. I am biased.
Nice.
But
who did you put in your power rankings as number 1 at the start of the year?
I put Liquid because
Interesting.
Cloud9 was too high last split and it hurt him, so I had to put underdog energy.
Sly.
Yep.
I just remember I was the only one to put Cloud9 first, and then everyone thought I was trolling. They're in first.
So is Liquid.
Where's my
Yeah,
no,
so is Liquid.
They're not. They've lost one more game. Same match score.
Game score, yeah.
Cloud9 is currently in first. I'm just saying I wasn't trolling. And I'm offended.
Is everyone saying you're trolling? Because
Azael said it on a cast last week. 2 weeks ago.
okay,
He's like,
okay.
yeah, it was like some Cloud9 power ranking. Yeah, like Jatt's the only one that put Cloud9 first, and I think it was trolling. I'm like, what? I'm right.
So,
What the hell?
So it was one person
Yeah.
who said you were trolling.
I feel like you've said it.
You've thought it. You all thought it.
You thought it. I can see it in your eyes. You're thinking it. Everyone's thinking it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think Liquid's been looking shakier than C9 for sure. But both teams haven't been looking perfect. They've been slightly sloppy, and I think that comes from not being pushed. From they're both undefeated. It's
for sure.
It's actually hard to be in perfect form when you're winning too much because you don't have that that pain of a loss to kind of motivate you in the back of your mind. Obviously, you try your hardest. No one intentionally lets themselves slip, but it's hard to get the same level of motivation when you haven't really felt it.
This is a really hard prediction for me because I'm reconciling the two kind of backstories to both of these teams, where the Team Liquid one is one of extreme hype, and that a lot of it is predicated on their international games.
Right.
People are so sure, myself included, and goes to show why we all had very similar power rankings at the beginning of the year, that because this team works really hard, they're really driven. So like after MSI, they had no like MSI hangover. They were all like streaming their solo queue games, and then also their rigorous practice schedule is always talked about frequently by the other teams, with them doing triple blocks a lot, and everybody referencing the time that this team puts in, and having like Core JJ and Impact, two of the biggest workhorses in the LCS that are always like looking for the next step. That plus their international success and being outspoken about how much they learned, from those games, is like that created this massive hype for Team Liquid. Whereas Cloud9, people have the backstory of, oh man, they've got these happy fun games where they turbo smash you super early game, and then because they're playing these comps and this style like Meteos is referencing, if you make a mistake, then it is so hilarious and everyone can just jump on, oh my God, you threw this massive lead. And then like you're playing stuff that isn't necessarily a better comp for coming back later in the game. And once you've thrown your momentum and your early game lead, is very difficult to get it back. And so there is much more of a hesitancy to vote for Cloud9 because of stability. And they seem like a much more reckless but very good team than Team Liquid seem like the more like studious, hardworking, if you will, type of rank 1 team. And so it is very difficult because with those two backstories, I would kind of give the edge to the Team Liquid side because of Cloud9 feeling like the more reckless one. But I have a feeling right now that Team Liquid are just overhyped. I feel like it has been too much. And it has just hit this all-time peak of being overhyped. And so I'm kind of leaning towards Cloud9 taking them down.
So you're locking in C9 2-1.
I think that I am. Yes. These players on Team Liquid, I would not say these are the types of players to get really big egos. But with everybody so heavily supporting you, and them and like the narrative has just been they're just the best team in the LCS.
They missed a ban on stage like 2 weeks
Let's
ago.
analyze the
Well, no,
cracks.
Core said it in an interview.
Yeah.
I just forgot that it was my ban. That's not being very locked in. Yeah. Also, I'm just very happy right now that both you and Meteos have predicted C9 in this match.
Why does that make you happy? Does it fill you with
vindication?
Joy? Yes,
Because I was on this train earlier,
right.
And now that you've joined the train, you can't be right and me be wrong. So either we're both wrong, or I'm completely
not alone,
right, and you're only
not alone anymore.
So
Jatt
this is the
finally has a
best.
friend.
Yeah, because if TL wins, you both already jumped off the wagon too early.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
Jatt's
excited.
Jatt's the conductor. He's been
I
here the
could
whole
still
time.
be 100% right. Yeah. And that's what I truly care about.
All right.
Yeah.
Filled with joy at the prospect, even though.
And I want Team Liquid to get motivated a little bit because I want to see them succeed at Worlds. So I actually want to see them get knocked down by Team Liquid. I want to see C9 maintain their confidence because I think in the same way that we say, Meteos, that it's hard to improve when you're at the top of a region, it's also really hard to play these high execution, need to play aggressive team comps and lose and keep confidence. We see it with 100 Thieves or even Dignitas losing over and over again can actually destroy your mental. So there's pros and cons to having the easy schedule to start and the hard schedule to start. And I think right now C9 is reaping the benefits of the early schedule, which actually makes them better.
Yep.
Famous last words as they go 0-2 to finish against C9 and FlyQuest. But we'll see.
Yep. Real quick, do we want to touch on any of these other matches coming up because it is still important for the rest of these teams. A lot of we have like the 4-way tie at 1-4, and so playoff dreams are very relevant for most of these teams.
Yeah.
Who's looking hot? Who's looking not?
I have one. I think Energy Dig is so interesting.
That's hot.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole matchup is hot.
Yeah. Just because Dig, everyone was just waiting and expecting them to beat Shopify Rebellion. They get 2-0'd last week, partially to Boogie, partially because they just randomly got like Jin mitted in game 2.
Dude, I think giving Boogie Brand was such a mistake.
Back-to-back Brand.
It's just the champion. He's
Didn't he have a
probably,
Zyra?
He'd back-to-back Brand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Zyra before.
not to say he can only play Brand or anything, but I think it's that style of champion that can have the most impact on the game. I think Brand is super strong right now, and he's one of the AP junglers that can have like the early game plays and influence lanes, be able to gank on top of like really solid team fight contribution. So I think that was probably a mistake from them.
Yeah. So Dig, have you guys called them the Boomer Super Team yet?
Yeah, last week we had a discussion.
I just like that moniker.
Yeah,
Because they're not a super team.
yeah. Because the pros episode, I think Azael was referencing how they kept it like JoJo and them kept calling them. Yeah, they would be a super team 10 years ago.
Yeah, I love it. So they are, if there's a team that is under the most mental stress, it would be 100 Thieves and these guys. Just because they've been losing so many scrims, the expectations are actually pretty high because the vibes had been good and they had that one win where they had the Dig season interview and everybody loves them. That's literally the only win. The things that they've been struggling with the most to me when I looked at the stats, they have only gotten first blood twice in any of the games. So they're almost always playing from the back foot. Weirdly enough, Energy, even though they get first blood almost half the time, have the third worst early game in the league. Dig has the second worst early game in the league. Stat wise.
Yeah, our big story for Energy in the previous ones were like how big a difference is that for that team, because that team used to be so good in the early game and used to be so aggressive.
And a lot of that was Palafox or Dokla in their laning phase, which I think has improved a little bit in the past few weeks. So it's just, I'm just more interested in the matchup, not necessarily making a prediction, because the fallout almost of Dignitas if they were to lose this game would be so high. We're going to go over the playoff scenario tool when we get on LCS, but the variance of winning this game versus losing this game and going from 1 wins to 2 wins for playoff chances is so incredibly high.
Yeah, I mean, this one's super hype because both of these teams had higher expectations than where they are right now. So that makes it really critical for both of them.
Even just momentum-wise, both of these teams are in similar boats where it's pretty much all the players in these teams have had a lot of success before, and now they're struggling to get back to that point. So I think a win for either of them is going to mean a lot, just even as far as you feel as a player, because, whoever loses is going to be feeling a lot of pressure, going to maybe start feeling a little doomed.
Yeah.
I think I'm predicting Dig.
It's a lot of there's a lot of players in this game that have won an LCS championship.
Yeah, I think Dig has gotten a little bit unlucky. They took single games off of C9. Was it C9, TL, and FlyQuest? I know it was definitely TL and definitely C9. They both took single games off of. And then I think they just got a little bit bamboozled by Shopify. I think they're almost expecting an easy game and just played pretty far below their level. I know Sven had a really bad series, but I don't think that's now their complete mark as a team. I think they're actually going to win this one.
I was going to say the FlyQuest series versus Dig was definitely a big stomp. but the Cloud9 and Team Liquid ones were definitely definitely getting their wins. And I like how they did it too. But we are getting a little crunched for time. I think when Meteos brought this up, I was looking at it, I'm like, every single one of these games actually has a super sick story. So we just did the Energy Dignitas one, and the TL Cloud9 one is already, the poster child for the whole weekend. But 100 Thieves versus Immortals, now that 100 Thieves have had this swap for bottom lane, and the sniper interview on the front page, this one is now incredibly hype because Immortals, people have still been, the players that you talk to still, respect the capabilities of this team to beat most of the teams in the LCS. I would say, honestly, it's getting to the point where like the top 3 tier, a lot of people are saying is out of reach for the other teams, but for everybody else, still quite in reach. And then the FlyQuest versus Shopify one, after Shopify got their first victories in the LCS and are on the rise with Boogie.
It's the Boogie show, man.
That one I feel like is also quite hype. So I think every single matchup this weekend has some really good angles to go with Shopify kind of doing their ramp up with Boogie. Right when he got in, I was like, ooh, they're looking way better, even though they still lost. And then they actually convert and grab the wins last weekend. If they upset FlyQuest, that would be huge. And that would completely like shatter this dynamic where we have decided of the top 3 gods of the LCS, the Cloud9, Team Liquid, FlyQuest triumvirate, will one of them fall to any of the lower teams here? Any of those upsets would be massive.
I'll keep it quick. I have 2 keys to victory for Shopify Rebellion.
Bringing back the old school. We did that in like 2016 or something?
Yeah.
We would have every game, we'd have a graphic. And it would have like 3 keys to victory.
Key number 1, Fake God neutralized Bwipo.
Okay, that's hard.
Their career against each other is Bwipo favored, 7-2, with a plus 18.5 CS difference at 15.
Okay.
Not to mention, Fake God did look a little shaky last week, even with his Pantheon into Renekton. Key number 2 would be Insanity needs to play champions with a very low global presence.
I like that one.
I need to cherry pick this stat a little bit better, but basically, he was 2-1 on Scion in spring. He's won a game with Zeri mid and Jin mid.
Yeah.
And that's like 80% of his wins this year. If he plays champions that other people play, they lose. And I know it seems like just cheese him, bro, is a really dumb thing to say. It's much harder to execute. But I think he has such a big champion pool. He should just play. You can find stuff that works. You could still play Scion. You're playing Zeri mid. You're playing Jin. Just like save his pick
Just
for
cheese
5
him.
and just cheese him, bro. Those are the 2 keys to victory.
I love it.
Yeah.
You got any more keys on you for the other ones? What
do you need?
We got to do keys for all of them. 100 Thieves Immortals.
Okay. 100 Thieves Immortals. Limit the isolated deaths for Sniper. This is the 100 Thieves key. And key number 2, this is stupid. Enable River in the early game, but it's literally just play like you did in spring. Would be play completely around your top side, ignore your bot side. Good luck, Tomo. Please don't get 2v2 Dove killed on your turret, and that's going to be their biggest chance. For Immortals, that's a tough one. I'm not sure.
100 Thieves doesn't show up.
I'm not sure what Immortals' identity is, if I'm completely honest.
Usually tactical taking over and then not getting caught mid and dying in the game.
Yeah, what I was gonna say. Here's my keys.
Okay.
I would find some keys for Immortals on the ground and give them to Armeo. Please clear towards bottom side and actually get bottom side priority. One of the biggest things, and I think that incorporating the Ivern is a very good look for Immortals, for Armeo. Get Armeo on either Ivern or Sejuani, and make him play aggressively around bottom lane.
Great.
Very, very aggressively, because that kind of solves like 2 of the issues that have popped up with Immortals. They've had a lot of issues, and
They're on an 8-game losing streak.
Yeah,
they won their first series 2-0, and they've not won since.
I for one would say
that's not good.
They're looking rough.
I would say they should ignore some of the solo lane issues that they have had and just focus on getting Armeo active and getting him to the bottom lane so that they can invest in tactical and then have tactical stonks pay off for, dragon fights and team fights later on. That's That's our keys. Boom.
Good keys. Nice.
Nice
Boom.
keys.
Yeah.
Okay.
When are you guys coming on JLXP?
I thought this was JLX.
do
The
you?
logo's wrong, man.
When was the last time you recorded a JLXP?
It was MSI when G2 won. I said G2 or the exception. And then they went on to lose the rest of the games.
Wait, it's been that long?
It's been a bit.
Wow.
I'm always down. Just
Yeah.
call me up anytime.
Yeah.
Hey,
so then if we
gonna do
make the hollow promises of like, oh yeah, for sure, we'll be on next time we record.
Okay.
It's probably safe because you're not going to record for like 2 years, right?
Hey. Hey.
Is that safe for us to do?
Hey. Don't say that.
All right, that's going to wrap up the dive. Thank you. The dive driven by Kia, of course. Remember, if you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of the dive. As Jatt was referencing later, there's also a lot of very good other content.
Yeah, JLXP will be releasing soon.
Yeah, on the LCS YouTube. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure that you send us questions, remember, on Twitter with the hashtag #TheDiveLOL. So that we have a lot of questions for our community episodes. And LCS Week 6 starts this Saturday at 1 p.m. as Energy take on Dignitas. Make sure you tune in. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.
Thanks for having me back. Nice podcasting with you, Meteos. First time for everything.
Hell yeah.